Hey everybody, welcome to Coffee Code and Chat. I am joined by Web Dev Cody. Has an amazing YouTube channel. If I'm sure everybody knows, I don't have to tell you. But thank you, Cody, for joining us. How are you today?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, nice. No, it's really awesome. Just a little context. I remember learning to code. I found your channel, and what was really cool when I found your channel was like you had followers, but it wasn't where it was today. And it was kind of cool to be part of your journey and see you grow. So like, congratulations on where you are today. And what I wanted to do is talk to you because you create a lot of content about coding, but I wanted to kind of pick your brain about you, like how'd you get started, what sparked your interest in becoming a web developer. So I guess we could start from like when you were a young lad and you were thinking about what to do in life. How'd you decide to like, hey, I'm gonna go into web development or programming?
Yeah, so okay, let me start back. I've always been on the computer my whole life, right? I played tons of video games, Diablo 2, Counter-Strike, Half-Life, I don't know, Command and Conquer even before that. So I love games, and I was always curious, like, how do people make games? Because it's really cool. And then when I went to middle school, there was like a web design class that I took. So I think I was like maybe seventh grade or something. So they teach you like HTML tags, how to make the old school tables, and like you had no interactivity on your sites. So that was pretty cool. I did that. Um, but I didn't really get more serious about programming until high school, where there was like more advanced web design classes, and there was like an intro to what was it called? It's like a really, it's like a language that has like a visual editor. I think it's Visual Basic. So they taught
Okay,
you
yeah,
Visual Basic, and you made like a little canon game, and like I think I had no idea what I was doing honestly in those classes. Like I was surprised I even passed those classes because it's like he'll show you slides and talk about coding, but then like at some point you just don't, it doesn't click until like there is that point that it does click. I don't know if I'm making sense, but so I did
no,
that
no, that
Visual
makes
Basic.
perfect sense.
Yeah. But then in my senior and junior year in high school, they provided a class called like Computer Science A and Computer Science B, which are AP course credits. So that they kind of introduced me to Java and like object oriented programming, abstract interfaces, stuff like that. And so from middle school to high school, I kind of dabbled in it. But then I decided like I want to actually do this as a career. My dad was also a programmer. He did it for like 30
Oh,
years.
nice.
But I just did it not because of him. I did because like I really just enjoy problem solving and the mathematical side of things and the programming languages side of things. So yeah, um, I'm not sure. You want to just go through the whole journey, or that's kind of how I
Yeah,
got
no,
into
no,
it.
no. I think it's cool. I think what I like also like because I know there's a lot of people that break into the industry as self-taught developers. And my personal opinion, if you have the opportunity to go to school and get the CS degree, I think you should do it. So maybe you could give your thoughts about like your process and what you think now. And just to put things in context, I started learning to code at 35, and for me, going to university at the time, I felt like that's a long path. It takes 4 years. And by the way, took me 4 years to get my first job as a self-taught developer. So maybe I should have just went back to university. But there's like time cost, there's like financial cost, there's all the stuff. So I went a self-taught route. But I still believe if you're able to, CS degree will never hurt you. So like, can you talk about your experience, like what your thoughts are, and maybe some tips for someone who maybe did not go that traditional path?
Yeah, so I would say if you have the ability to, like the financial ability to, or the time to go to college, I still think it's a good idea, especially when you're younger, because you really don't know what you're doing with your life, and it's good to have that structure. When you're older, you have responsibilities, you have this drive of I need to make more money, I need to like progress my life, and it's much, I would say, easier, but like the motivation's there. If you're younger, you don't really have that motivation. I think it's harder to be self-taught, but that's just my perspective. So I
Yeah.
did CS, computer science. Overall, I mean the stuff I learned, I feel like a lot of it doesn't really apply to the workplace, but they did teach you how to problem solve. They did teach you about like abstract things that you're not going to get exposed to in the workforce. Um, like you're going to learn about a lot about recursion and like data structures and solving discrete mathematics and stuff. Do those apply to web design and web development? Probably not. But the problem solving aspects and just trying to force students to think outside the box, I think was a good experience for me. And then I also grew up in Florida, so they provided like 75% tuition for us.
Wow.
So
Nice.
my dad only had to pay 25% because I, got good grades in high school. So it's kind of like a no-brainer for me and like my privilege growing up. But for others, it might be, more costly. I would definitely look around if you are interested in going to college. Just try to find tuitions or sponsorships or scholarships. Some states, like I live in Tennessee, they provide community college the first 2 years completely free. Um, so don't feel like there's this giant barrier. Depending on where you live, they might have a lot of opportunities. You have to just put in the effort to, get those financial supports.
Yeah, no, 100%. And for me, I have a daughter who's in the Navy. She's coming back to the States. She's stationed in Japan, so she's going to go back to university again. So for fun, I wanted to be like, you know what? It'll be cool if I'm taking classes, she's taking classes, then we could talk about like, just
That's
BS
cool.
of having homework. But I was like, you know what? It'll be interesting to learn some computer science concepts that maybe I missed out as a self-taught developer. So I actually looked into like community colleges, and you could actually start with like a 2-year degree. And typically, like community colleges, they're a lot less expensive than a regular 4-year degree. So you could do 2 years in a community college or going part time, and then you could transfer if you want. So I feel like you could always, if you feel like you need to learn something, there is a barrier, but there is workarounds that you could do, which is pretty cool. And so after like college, like getting your first job, like was it like easy, difficult? I know like the times are different, but what was your process? And tell us about your first experience.
Yeah, so to give you some context, in college, I didn't try to, I joined the programming team. So I went to college in Florida. I don't know how much information I want to give out, but like there's like
Yeah, yeah,
100 and
no
something
worries.
people that try out for the programming team where you basically sit around, try to solve these leak code problems. And there's like these national competitions that all the colleges go to and try to compete against each other. So I got accepted to that team, and then they teach you a bunch about just problem solving and doing these type of leak code problems. Um, so I had that in my background when I was at college, and then also at college, I tried to join an undergraduate research opportunity. So they paid us X amount of money for the summer, and we just sat there and just learned about computer vision. So like, given an image, how do you count how many heads are in the image, right? So you have like an image of a concert of like Taylor Swift. How do you count how many people are in that image? That's kind of like the problem that I was trying to solve. And I actually got a research paper published with my name on it. Obviously, I
That's
didn't do
awesome.
all the work, right? The smart people did the work. I just helped do some of the assistant stuff. But I think that and just the computer science programming team like really helped build up my resume, because when you graduate from college, like you don't really have that much experiences other than the projects that the college helps you work on. So just trying to add more things, and if you can find those opportunities while you're at college, like get out there, join clubs. That's how I would recommend doing. Yeah, so I got those things, and then when I was doing the undergraduate research, we had a company come in just to hear us all kind of give our presentations about what we've been doing. So I think it was like 15 people in the research group. We all just kind of gave a presentation, a walk through what we did. And I think that building that connection with that company, when I graduated, I had a job lined up at that company already. And like right out of college, I think I took like a 2 week or a 3 week break, and then I started working in the workforce,
Yeah.
which is another thing I want to talk about. Like I probably should have taken more time off because I was just so burned out. But
Oh my, yeah. Yeah, no,
yeah, that's how I kind of got into it.
yeah, it's kind of interesting. Wow, it's like I didn't know about like the whole like programming team. That's so cool. Like, and just like what I like based on what you said is that you're always like looking for an opportunity, like, and just to challenge yourself. I think that's very, very like important to remember. Uh, and we could talk a little bit more about learning to code. But I remember when I first started out, and something that held me back is that like I was stuck in tutorial hell learning the basics, and I felt like I need to do more tutorials, but those tutorials were all like basics, and I felt like for like first 2 years of my learning journey, I was like afraid to step out of my comfort zone and like to push myself to try something different. And I think that definitely like stumbled me a little bit, because I feel like it's very easy to spend time doing things that you're comfortable with, but it doesn't help you grow. And so kind of, eventually I was like, man, I need to challenge myself more and try to step out of my comfort zone to learn new things. So when you, so let me just like talk a little bit about the college degree. So like the stuff that you learn about like solving problems, critical thinking. If someone is not going to a college course, can you give some tips of how someone could, or things that someone can do to kind of improve that aspect of their knowledge?
So they're just doing like the self-learning route.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I mean, I always recommend like you need to focus on one project and just try to build it. And if you don't feel like you know the fundamentals to even do that, then I think taking at least one course and like finishing it from start to finish, like what you did. I know you said you signed up for like tons of different courses. I
Yeah.
would not do that. I would just pick one or two that have like 5-star ratings and just watch through the whole thing and make sure you understand what they're actually teaching. If you can't like on your own kind of repeat what they just taught, like if they taught you about a for loop and then you close the video and you load up VS Code, you can't write a for loop by yourself. You need to stop and you need to understand the basics because it just gets harder and harder. Um, so yeah, watch a couple good courses. There's free tutorials out there too, but it's hit and miss. I think some tutorials are really
Yeah.
good. Some might be too advanced and you don't know it's too advanced. Um, I think even watching, like, I don't want to give a shout out to my own channel, but even watching someone who's more experienced and just seeing like, okay, what is their thought process? How do they code? What shortcuts do they know that makes them really proficient? Because I remember when I started off, like I waste so much time just like mistyping stuff, and like you don't learn about all these VS Code extensions until you watch other people use them, and you're like, oh, I can use this to really auto format my entire code when I save. Like that's crazy. So yeah, make sure you kind of at least get a mentor. It doesn't have to be like an actual one-on-one mentor, but just someone that you know is more experienced and you look up to and just learn from them. Go through a course and then try to build something yourself, like with no help. I mean, you can go and like join a Discord and a community and ask for help along the way. But the idea is you need to solve these problems yourself and like make sure that all the dots are connecting in your head, or else you're just going to get stuck and not be able to progress.
Yeah, and that makes like so much sense. And what you just mentioned took me a while to figure out on my own, and I wasted a lot of time. And now I'm in that same belief, like if if you have like 10 courses on Udemy, you already messed up. It's like one, two, three great courses, something that, like you said, really understand, and then right away, just instead of taking more courses, just start building stuff from scratch. And I found out I learned more from failing, like hitting my head against the desk and slowly like trying to figure things out by going on forums, going on Reddit, going on Stack Overflow, going on Journey communities, watching other channels. Now we have ChatGPT, which lies half the time, but it's fine. But I think the process of actually figuring stuff out on your own, and what I found out when I make a mistake and I go through that painful process of figuring out what the answer is, I tend to not forget those things as easily if I just took a tutorial. So that's a really, really good advice. And in terms of like, not shouting, like everybody go to Web Dev Cody's channel. I know I don't have as many viewers, so it's not that many people. If you somehow still haven't discovered Web Dev Cody, amazing channel. And speaking of mentors, like you said, sometimes you don't need to have you could like mentor that if you have a friend, that's awesome. But for me, like I was actually saying before the stream started, like a lot of my motivation for my YouTube channel, like continue to growing as a developer, came from following Web Dev Cody and watching his content, which is like pretty awesome. And by the way, if you have questions in the chat for Cody, definitely like throw them in there and we'll get to them as we go through. And one thing I do want to talk about, like your journey on YouTube, what motivated you to start a YouTube channel, and then talk a little bit about like where you are today.
Yeah. So the YouTube channel, I just always liked teaching. I don't know why. Like in college, I remember like tutoring my friends and just programming, trying to get them into programming because I love programming. I thought it was super fun and like a great way to like challenge yourself. So any chance I got to like teach people and try to hype people up on programming, I tried to do that. And for YouTube, like there's 2 points you mentioned on the last topic. I do want to kind of circle back at some point, which was
Yeah.
ChatGPT for learning, like absolutely critical. I use it all the time as a senior engineer who's been working for 10 years because it's just so great to learn new things. And if you're a beginner, I would say definitely use ChatGPT. Like keep it in the back of your mind that it's there. Use it as much as possible. And then the second thing mentioned that I've already forgotten what it was I wanted to talk about. But anyway, let's just circle back to the question you just asked, which was what was that question? I wrote my brain's going
Yeah,
crazy.
no, it's fine. Like it's funny because
Oh, my
I
channel.
discovered
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, your YouTube channel. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I like teaching, and so I started making a channel. And you can go to Free Code Camp and you can scroll back like, I don't know, it was like 5 years ago where I published like a couple of Vue tutorials. It's super rough. And you can also scroll back in my own channel like 5 or something years ago where I tried like publishing some videos. You know, you get 2 views, you get 3 views on your videos, and you're like, wow, maybe I should just quit. And you do that enough, and you're like, I can't make it into this YouTube thing. And again, it wasn't ever about making it. It was never about getting views and subscribers, but that is some external motivation when you see people are like commenting saying, thank you so much. You've actually helped me understand how a for loop works, or you helped me understand a React to use state. So when you start getting more of those comments and more of those likes, it's kind of like the snowball effect. You're like, oh, I'm actually helping the world. Let's just go ahead and keep publishing more content. So that's the approach I took. And then some who watch my channel know, like back when we had our second child, my wife went into heart failure. It's like a medical condition where you can give birth and your heart just literally starts giving out. And like that was probably the lowest point in my life where I just needed an outlet, and I just kind of turned to YouTube and making videos because I feel like I had no control of what's going on in my life. So making videos was that outlet. Um, so that was really good. And at some point, I kind of just try to make it a habit of keep on making videos. I was kind of off and on and off and on because when you have 2 kids, like you just don't have time to do anything, unfortunately. 2 kids and a wife, and then your wife's in heart failure, so she has no energy to do anything because of the meds. But at some point, my MacBook Pro, like 2013, was super slow, and like recording and editing sucked. So I upgraded to an M1 Air, a MacBook M1 Air, and like I was able to push out content daily because it was so fast to record and edit and code at the same time. And that's when you can like scroll back on my channel and my videos. You can see at some point I just started publishing content like every single day. And then I started making YouTube shorts, which really like slingshotted my channel. I guess people really like those JavaScript things I talked about. Um, and then I just kept going from there. I saw the momentum, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to keep going because I know when you stop producing content, people just leave your channel and they kind of forget about you. So it's been nonstop from there, and it's been paying off. It's been a lot of fun. I feel like I've helped a lot of people, and I'm just still growing myself. Like, sorry to keep rambling, but like I feel like the YouTube channel itself has been the one thing that's really improved my software engineering skills. It's taught me how to like speak. I've always been really scared about speaking. I get nervous even today in meetings when there's like 8 people I've been working with for 4 years and they ask me a question. I'm like, oh, it's my turn to speak. But on YouTube, I feel like it's just me. I can say what I want. There's no one judging me, although I know some people do judge others on YouTube, but I just feel like it's my space and I can kind of control it and say what I want, learn what I want. And it's been really fun.
Yeah, two things that you brought up like really important. I'll start with the less like serious one. Like, so I feel like being on YouTube and kind of through teaching, I feel like you learn like the programming concepts better because you kind of have to think about how to present them to someone. And sometimes even if you present things wrong, like then you do your research, you're like, oh, I did this wrong. Like, so let me like do another like thing and correct it. And I think teaching is like it's a very good process for like learning and improving your understanding. And the second item that I want to bring up is like the difficulties that you had in your life, like with your wife's like sorry about that, it's like really hard. But what I want to say, like nobody is immune to having difficulties in their life. Like Cody, you listening, me, I like last year for me like was very terrible like too. And it's like there's always things that come up that we find excuses like we can't do this, we can't do that. But what I want to say is that just because you know everybody has difficult lives, and whenever someone's trying to switch careers to improve their life or their family, like everybody's suffering. So in everybody's have a hard time, and so you kind of have to just be like, you know what, I'm just still going to do this one thing that I know that if I put some time into it is going to improve my future. And so I started learning to code like at 35. Like I didn't get my first job until 39 years of age. Maybe I could have done it faster, maybe I couldn't. I had as every excuse like that people could give like why I shouldn't learn to code, but I still will not like I don't regret making that change, you know what I mean? And so I just wanted to kind of say like if you're learning to code and you feel like it's hard, yeah, it's going to be hard, but there's a reason for it, and just persevere through it, and you'll get there. But just
Yeah.
my little rant there for people that are on the fence.
Definitely, I want to touch on that topic of this is an approach I do today with my channel, with my side projects. If you can find 30 minutes in the day where you're doing watching TV, you're doing something that literally is providing no value to your life, like scrolling through TikTok or scrolling through YouTube, like, it's like a habit. You just scroll, you don't even know what you're
Yeah.
scrolling for, you're just scrolling. If you find yourself doing that, that's 30 minutes you could actually be investing in your knowledge and yourself. So if you got a side project, 30 minutes, just get disciplined, work on it 30 minutes a day. If you have a YouTube channel, 30 minutes, just try to publish a 5-minute video just to get stuff out there and really improve yourself. I definitely recommend doing that if you feel like you're in a rut or something.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the reasons I did the YouTube channel is because I wanted to have some sort of accountability to myself. Regardless if people comment or say stuff, it's like, oh, Paul, you didn't, in 1 month, you didn't put a video on what you learned. It's like, hey, you got to get back to it. And so I think like having some sort of accountability for yourself and doing things consistently, and it makes a huge difference. And this is one of the things that I like about like Cody, like something that I strive to do is that Cody's a software engineer that happens to have a YouTube channel, and he's just sharing his journey. Like my goal when I first started my YouTube channel is just to kind of document my journey. Is it even possible to switch careers late in life? And like I work at a company, like that's like my main goal. And I think like I like the fact that you're someone that I could like relate to in terms of like, oh man, this is a real person. He's a developer. This is the things he's doing and lesson learned. And I think for people starting out, is just understand that sometimes on the social media, on YouTube, you might see the final result, but you don't see the struggle that led to that success. And you know, it's sometimes very easy to judge, but like, man, I can't be that person. But what you're seeing on social media, on YouTube, you're seeing like the edited, super cut, the best version of them, and that doesn't like really showcase like the path that they took. So that's why sometimes I do like coding live streams, where in Cody and I were just talking about earlier that live streaming sometimes just doesn't do well on YouTube. It's just the fact of the matter. But I do it because I literally just want to record myself of what it really looks like to code on your own. And it's boring. You're making mistakes all the time. Like sometimes stuff doesn't work, and then you just go on this tangent of looking stuff up. But that's the reality. It's not just like you do something and it works. Like a lot of times when I work on a project, I'll build it like 3 times before like I'm like, oh, I finally get it. So I want to kind of pivot a little bit. And if again, like Cody, if you have anything else you want to add, of course you could do it. But
Yeah. So I like, as you're talking, I just get more ideas. I
yeah,
got three
perfect,
ideas I
perfect.
want to talk about real quick. If
Do
you
it,
have,
do it. Let's do it.
okay. So going off some topics, some points that you just made. When I was watching people on YouTube, like when I first started YouTube, I noticed that every video was like super perfect. Like no one showed mistakes, no one showed errors or bugs. And coming from my experience, I realized debugging is like 80% of the problem sometimes. Like I've literally spent 2 full weeks, me and my team, trying to debug one issue. It turned out to be one line issue. It was one line that it took like 4 people, 5 people, 2 weeks to figure out that line was the issue. So debugging is probably the most critical skills you need to learn when it comes to this job, but no one teaches it. So that's one thing that I try not to like edit out of my videos, although I think I'm doing a lot more editing now than I used to, unfortunately. Which leads me to the other point you made is if you can watch people live stream like on Twitch or YouTube and like see the actual process of coding. Unfortunately, like on Twitch, I feel like half the time people are just reading comments of other people. So it's not coding, but you need to watch someone like for real code. And when I started at my job, we do a lot of pair programming and mob programming. So every day you're in a Zoom with someone else who's probably more experienced than you if you get hired, like straight off from the, as a junior. If you get hired as a junior, you're going to be working with people who are mid or senior all day, 8 hours a day. You guys are switching back and forth, sharing screens, and you're learning so much because you guys are coding live together. And that's something that you're not going to get if you just code by yourself. That's something you're not going to get when you, excuse me, when you watch these really polished YouTube videos. So like Paul said, like if you can find videos that show you real coding, it's going to be boring, but if you can get through that, it's going to be a really good experience. And then the last point, that something that you talked about, when I started learning the code back in like 2009, there was literally no content on YouTube. Like, yeah, there's a couple of people with horrible microphones making PHP content, but like if you wanted to learn something, you had to go and read about it. You had to go and like hack at it and understand what's going on, and you had to fail, which is another point that Paul mentioned. If you're not failing every day, like I think I have probably 30 different games that I tried starting, like multiplayer games. I tried starting it up and then I abandoned it and I started a new project and I quit on that because it was too hard. But after you do that enough, it just becomes easier and easier because you keep failing and learning from all these mistakes. I think those are all the points that I want to hit on, but
Yeah,
yeah.
just to quickly add, like a lot of people feel like, oh, people gonna judge me. They're gonna see my stupid like mistakes. They're gonna think I'm a fraud, like whatever. So if you take a look at my GitHub, I have like so many repos there. I should probably clean it, and I call it my graveyard of failed projects because they're all projects that I either abandoned, didn't like continue working on, just thought that they were trash, or just like completely just moved on to something else. And what I realized is that even though I have all those crappy projects, there's one lesson that I learned like building them. That's something that I took away, and I think that's kind of pretty awesome and something to keep in mind. So as long as you're failing, like I keep saying, so like not to talk too much about myself, but like I failed in life, like throughout my life, like so many times that like to me, like I have this saying called fail forward. You just fail and hopefully you learn your lesson and you improve and you keep moving forward. And so to me, when people say, aren't you afraid to fail? I'm like, dude, this is better than where I was before. So I'm like happy here. And that's like my attitude. But through this process, you just get so much better. And as long as you have a feedback cycle where the mistake you made the day before, you learn a little bit from it, so you're not making it consistently the same way, then you're only going to move forward, and it just becomes a matter of time. So when I was transitioning careers, I used to teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA. I got hurt, and I was like, man, I can't sustain this. I need to find something else. So I started learning to code, and I always like tech stuff, so this like made sense to me. And a lot of people like, well, weren't you afraid you're not going to get hired? And honestly, to me, I literally was like, I'm going to keep doing this until I get hired. There's no like going back. And I know that's a hard thing to do, like depending if you're older, if you have like already a job that makes good money and you already have a family and like all this other stuff, like it's kind of hard to like, oh man, I'm going to transition to a career and the future is not guaranteed. So like I understand that part, but for me, I was just like, I'm either going to do this or I'm either going to do this. And that's something that kind of helped me to like get into it, is that daily failure and just not giving up and moving forward. So what I wanted to a little bit pick your brain about, like, how do you choose? I know we're all over the place, so if anybody has questions, let them know. Otherwise, I'll keep asking.
I have more bullet points that I wrote down as we're talking, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So let's do your bullet points first, and then I'll come back because I think I'm going to take the conversation.
I promise I won't
like
keep writing down bullet points. Actually,
no, it's perfect. No, I might try to hear what comes up in this like organic discussion for sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So first I want to say that like you mentioned something about you as a beginner, you're watching people on YouTube and you're like, some people can feel intimidated because they're like watching people and like, dude, how does he know how to solve this problem like live? How is he doing this? And I would say that like everyone has their own skill sets. Like as an example, I've never spoken at a conference, but Paul has. So I actually look up to Paul. I'm like, dude, that's crazy that he actually sat in front of like, I don't know how many people it was, at least 100 or something.
Yeah,
and,
it was pretty
spoke about content live in like an auditorium to people. Like that to me is like, I look up to that. I've never done that before. And even though I made like 700 videos on my channel, the thought of like getting out and speaking in front of people about something, like that's nerve-wracking to me.
Yes.
And I feel like I'd probably crap my pants if someone invited me to a conference to talk about who knows what. So that's like my first point, is that like, even though you might be intimidated by people you see online, just realize that everyone has their own skill sets, and like you just need to really understand your strengths and like learn from other people's strengths so you can add to your own skill base. And then another point that was mentioned is like getting called out on YouTube. When you first start on YouTube, you're going to make mistakes and people are going to call you out and call you stupid, and you're going to feel like you're not a good engineer, you're not a good programmer. But this is like a advice to anyone who's like trying to start a channel or wants to do content creation, take that advice and like lower your defenses and actually listen to what they're saying. Maybe it's a sign that you need to do a little bit more research before you make a video. Maybe it's a sign that you're speaking too fast. I've gotten so many comments of like, dude, you're good at teaching, but you speak so fast. And so like, that's kind of forced me over the years to like slow down, think about what I'm about to say, and kind of like break down the problem so people can follow along. But yeah, you're gonna get called out a lot, especially if you get on social media. But I think it's good advice. It's just kind of delivered in a really hostile way sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
Those are my
It's funny. Whenever, like, I think like your point to listen to people, and if they have like valid criticism and not trolling, like 100%, like make note of it. But I have this video, and it's on my YouTube channel, and it's got like 27,000 views, and for me that's like pretty exciting. And one of the comments that I had, it was just so obnoxious that I pinned it. And it literally was like, said something along those lines. Man, the comment you pinned said, you don't know anything about vanilla JavaScript, HTML, or possibly CSS. And they just went into this whole tirade of like complete nonsense. And I realized in that video, I made an example, like, it's a good video. I don't know what they're complaining, to be honest. But like, like I realized is that, like, people have different point of views, and they just might have misunderstood what you were trying to articulate. So in that video, I kind of used JavaScript, but I wrote it the way kind of React would write, like, like your HTML. So you would never do it with vanilla JavaScript, but I just used it as an example, and I said, this is why using like a framework is much simpler, but I didn't articulate what I was trying to show. So to them, they're like, why would you do this? There's so much easier way to use JavaScript with your HTML. Why you like creating out of your way, like, and doing this crazy stuff? But like, it was a fun lesson learned. But my approach is like, no matter what anybody says, any feedback is good feedback, because one, they're engaging with your content, and two, they're pointing things out that, like you said, Cody, you could use as feedback to make yourself better. So yeah, but
yeah,
so
I
many
even,
trash talkers on YouTube. Sorry.
that's mean. There's mean people online, but like even in my videos I publish today, like people always ask, well, why didn't you just, like, I was making like a React component and I was inlining the on-click handler, and people are like, why would you do that? That's so like bad code. And I'm like, obviously, if I wasn't doing a live coding with you, there's ways that I would refactor this code like after coding, right?
Yeah.
Coding is an organic process. You just get your thoughts out onto the text file. You come back, iteration 1, you clean it up, iteration 2, you clean it up some more, and you keep doing that. But in a video, if I'm doing something live, I don't have all this time. Like, there's this trade-off and balancing act of the video has to be entertaining, it can't be too long, and it also has to have good content. So it's like you have to figure out what you want to add in, what you want to cut out, where you want to elaborate on points, or else you just have a 2-hour video that everyone clicks away off of like after 5 minutes.
Yeah, and it's definitely this iterative process of, that's why you have like versions, alpha, like, or like, whatever. But here's the funny thing, like, so I'm not like the best developer, like, and I still have room to grow, but I get like all this stuff, like sometimes from developers that like, Paul, like, this is wrong, this doesn't work. I'm like, it works good enough. And the funny example that I have, I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So for fun, I wanted to build an app that's around Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and it's bad code. It has very bad feature. Like, I mean, it needs so much refactor. But here's the cool thing. Like, when you look at the end product, like I have this little like PWA app, it kind of works. And when I say kind of, like, it'll probably break like 50% of the time, but I'm able to show it to my friends and get them excited about the thing and start getting their feedback. And so what I realized, it's like, make it work so you could show it to users, and then based on feedback, lessons learned, make it better. So like, you'll never make something perfect from day one. So somebody who's trying to build something perfect, they might spend 3 to 4 months and it's still not good enough. So they're afraid to show it to their users. To me, I'm like, let me just make the best version that I feel, that I could show someone. And so my like process from start to like 0 to 1, I try to make it as fast as possible. And I don't care if people say like, oh, your code is stupid, because like at the end of the day, I have my end user looking at it and giving me feedback. And so to me, like, I'm just like, focus on building, focus on getting stuff out the door, and then everything else you could fix, right? But if you try to make something perfect from the very first start, like, to me, I feel like I'll never get there. And that's something like for me that has been making finishing projects like more like a attainable goal, like, is not caring what other people say. Otherwise, like, I would just get stuck. And I realized just to this point of learning that a lot, like you brought up at the beginning of the stream, you said, build one project from start to finish. And I realized like the greatest epidemic with a lot of like people starting out is that they don't have one project that they took from start to finish and like deploy it, even if it's like on Netlify, and I think it's such a good practice to code something, have something that you could show on the web and actually show it to a friend, even if it sucks. Because like in my mind, I literally went through the process. I had an idea, I brought it to life, and I showed it to an end user. And once you get better, that could be like, hey, I found the client, they told me what they wanted, I built it, and now they have an end product. I wanted to kind of talk about, and if you have additional stuff to add, you can, but I know you built a couple of projects. You built your icon generator, which I thought was like really exciting, because to me, as a developer, like for instance, people like ask me like, Paul, like you need to make tutorials so you could sell them to people. I'm like, first of all, there's a lot of tutorials. So I don't need to add extra tutorials because Cody does it better. Like other people do it better. So great. So I want to build a SaaS product. And so to me, like, that's what I want to do, is have a deliverable. And so can you talk like lessons learned, like building like your first SaaS product, some tips you give, and just start there, and I'm sure I'll have some follow up.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I align on like how software should be built. I would say that there's different types of engineers. There's some engineers who feel like the entire system needs to be thought up. You need to have like boxes for different classes and draw arrows between this class and understand you need this React component that's going to talk to this one. And they like plan the whole thing out. I don't operate that way. I think it's like a biggest waste of time. And if you learn about agile web development, or just agile development in general, if you plan too much, you end up realizing that your plan was wrong, completely wrong. So I personally like to organically just do stuff. If I feel like the code's not good, or there's like an issue with trying to add a new feature, that's when I stop, I refactor the code, and I keep on doing that process. And that's the same thing I did with the icon generator. I think people might see that product and think it's really cool. I just saw someone on Twitter make something similar. So I kind of took the idea and I just built something in about a day, and I got it launched out there. I had a Stripe payments already set up. And I just wanted to see if I did the same thing, would people pay me for it? And I started seeing some actual like people pay for it. And that was actually a great eye-opening moment for me, because I never actually built something outside of like my day job, of a real customer coming in and paying for something that I set up. So that kind of validated the idea of my little SaaS product. And I know it was already valid because I saw someone on Twitter do it, and he was getting like a couple $1,000s, but he also had a huge following on Twitter. So there's always that balance between, is he getting traffic because he's posting on his channel, or is he getting traffic because he actually has a real product that people like want to use? So I just kept on adding to it, like just thinking about, like, what can I add to make this better? What UI changes can I change to make it look nicer? And then when, like, for example, when DALL-E 3 came out, I added a toggle so you can change between DALL-E 2 and DALL-E 3. And then I have like an entire set of what the DALL-E 2 icons will look like, what an entire set of DALL-E 3 icons will look like, so people can pick and choose which ones they want to do. So it's just an iterative process of like, add something, kind of figure out, do your sales go up? I believe when DALL-E 3 came out and I added that feature, I saw sales go up like 13%. And I'm not sitting there marketing it. I don't market my stuff that much on my YouTube channel. And I think people think that icon generator is only successful because of my channel, but I have Google Analytics set up, and it says a majority of all my traffic comes from keyword searches. So people are really going to Google. Yeah, they're actually going to Google saying, I need icons. And then it takes them to my site. So that's really cool from my perspective, because I'm like, I thought I was just getting traffic because like I got a YouTube channel and I got, some decent followers on Twitter. But I'm seeing that people actually want AI generated icons, and they want to kind of improve their design process by using AI. So that's I think that kind of hits on the question that you asked, right?
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. And one thing I want to say, like, I think there's lots of different developers, and everybody has their own thing that they like. Some people like back end, some people like front end. But my thought process, like when I'm like working at a company, it's like I want to improve my skills that allow me to keep my job at my company. I always struggle with like imposter syndrome, like I don't know anything. And it's like, okay, let me keep my, but then on the back of my mind, it's like, but what if you get fired? It's like, what kind of skills do you need to have to actually build your own product, to sell it, and kind of have both those paths be in line, where I'm like, I want to have the skills that allow me to keep working at a company, but I also want to have the skills that allow me to go from like 0 to 1 with an idea and bring it to market. And I think for me, that approach just makes me feel better at night, because I feel like I'm developing the skill that if I do want to launch a product myself, like maybe one day I can. And I find that, when you think about the end user, you think about development a little bit easier, like not easier, like differently. Like for instance, this idea, like um, if I have a goal of a final product, like, I want to get it out there. How quickly can I get it out there? How quickly I could test it? How quickly I could get feedback to improve it? So yeah, that's kind of cool. And I'm still like never going to give up and continue to try to figure out how to build a SaaS product. But let me ask a follow-up question for that. Like, how do you decide what technology to use? Especially like, if you want to work fast and, you want to get something out there.
Uh, I guess it depends in regards to like a side project or in regards to like a legit product that a client's come to you and asked you to build.
Let's do like first like as a side project, and
Mhm.
then talk a little bit how if a client comes to you, because I think that's a very good distinction.
Yeah, so for a side project, I would say it doesn't really matter, but pick the tech that you're going to move fast with. So if you're a PHP developer, then you pick PHP, use MySQL, use your shared PHP host, get that deployed somewhere. Because I don't think users care too much about like everything being perfect, like the user experience. Like if you click a button and it works, I think users will be happy. Yeah, if you add some cool transitions and fade in and fade outs and whatnot, it just adds that nice polish that might put you ahead of some other competitor. But I think users just want your app to work and they want to see the results that they came and paid you for, right? So for example, my icon generator, if let's say once out of every five button clicks, it crashes or doesn't give you an icon. That's what you should be focusing on. You don't want it ever to crash or throw errors because then it ruins the reputation of your product, and also it just frustrates users, right? That you want to make sure that that's the stuff you're focusing on and not really the tech side of things. I think tech can kind of help you, but if you keep jumping around from Next to Remix to Vue to Svelte Kit to Solid, you're literally never going to accomplish anything in your life. You might learn different tech things, and I think that's something that people like to really get focused in on is like, Clojure versus C++ versus Java versus JavaScript and TypeScript. To me, I've been doing it for so long. It's like, dude, we're just re-implementing the same wheel over and over again. I just want to build products and sell them. So that's where my focus in. I know some other people are super hyped about like, what's that new one that's like Rust? Like there's always stuff to talk about Rust or HTMX now I see on Twitter. And it's like, I don't have the energy to learn something new if it doesn't help me move significantly faster from what I'm currently moving. If it gives me like a 10% boost, I'm not going to learn it. If it gives me a 100% boost, you best believe I'm going to learn it and jump over to it. But it's so hard to like take a current industry that's been trained on a certain technology and like even move that ball unless your new solution really changes the game. I don't know if I went off on a tangent there, but I
No,
think I
that's
answered
really
your
good. I
question.
wanted to really like kind of say this because a lot of developers, we all live in a bubble and we don't think about it, but your end user doesn't care about the framework you use. Like they
Yeah.
just care about, does their product work? And this is such a weird concept because sometimes we get into these like framework wars. Like I love I love Astra, I love Remix, I love Next.js. Like I love Next.js 14 is pretty awesome. The thing is like it does so many things that I think like and Cody, you mentioned to me like you feel like there might be like a steeper learning curve because there's just so much stuff to think about. And for me, I love Remix even like more because it's just much simpler. Like I don't have to think about too many things. Maybe it doesn't have all the cool features, like whatever. And so to me, like I'm able to move fast in it. I like, and so I'm like losing my mind also. But basically, like the end user doesn't care if you use Next.js, Remix. It's just as a developer, it's like, it's like, what are you comfortable? I like your point. Like, what can you move fast with? And then a lot of us, like who are on Twitter, you follow these like tech influencers, and just because they said, "Oh man, I need to use Rust for this next project," doesn't mean that you have to. You know what I mean? There's really no reason. And I think like it's like that's like I want to keep it like PG, like Saber wavering, like, hey, look how cool I am. I'm doing Rust. Like you're not as cool as me because you're not using Rust. You're using whatever. Like you're still
Yeah.
doing great React app. You're an idiot. Like what's wrong with you? Like people just want to talk because it's exciting, but at the end, it's like the end user doesn't care. And if you want to like build stuff and get it out the door, I think that's the most important part to focus on. But one thing that I want to bring up to is this difference between like when you have like a serious project and you have certain requirements. Can you talk a little bit like if you're in a company, how do you define that and how like that gets evaluated, I guess.
Yeah, so I mean, typically you don't get to pick the tech unless it's a brand new project, right? If you're a junior, you get hired to a project, you're stuck with what you get hired into. It's gonna be maybe it's Java using like Java EE with beans and Hibernate and all this other stuff. You don't really have a choice over that. But if it's a brand new project, I would say you have to kind of understand some basic requirements of what you're building. So if a client comes to you and says, "Hey, you know what? I need to build this page. It needs to load as fast as possible for users. I need to be able to share pages on Twitter for like OG images," then I would probably lean towards Next, right? It has a lot of built-in functionality for sharing social media images. It has server-side rendering. Like let's say the client says, "I need this to be SEO friendly. It needs to like index really well in Google." Then I would pick some server-side rendered framework over picking a single page application using Beat. So those are some of the tech choices that you have to make. It all boils down to what you're building, what your client wants. Also, data size is super important. Like, how big is your database? How much data are you storing? Are we talking about a million records? Are we talking about a trillion records? How big is your data? Is your data relational? Is your data just like a giant JSON object that you could just store in Mongo? These are some things you need to know up front because picking your database can be really detrimental to your project if you pick the wrong one. I personally would say most projects will work perfectly well with MySQL or Postgres. And then I think as your program or as your system's evolving, that's when you look to other solutions to try to handle various edge cases. Like, let's say you have this need to store a bunch of stuff, infinitely large data set, then you might want to reach out to DynamoDB because it's a great way to just automatically scale up and just insert a bunch of data. But you need to know the trade-offs because DynamoDB is very poor at searching. So if the client a year from now says, "You know what, I need you to search for all those records that you just added by X, Y, and Z," well, now you're screwed because there's no way to query Dynamo based on X, Y, and Z unless you do a bunch of rework, remigrate all those items to a new table that has different GSI1 PKs, etc., or indexes set up. I got into the weeds of like AWS, but my point is like on a more serious project, it's good to kind of lay out the pros and cons of these technologies and what a client and their data needs are, because that can really change the tech that you pick and also the team that you're working on. If you're working on a team and you have 8 other Java developers, why would you write your backend in Rust? Because now you have to train 8 other developers. They're going to spend months hacking at something. They have no idea what they're building. They don't know the best practices. And it's, in my opinion, I don't think that project is going to be very successful unless
Yeah.
you're really good at just like allowing them to learn. So you have to kind of read the room, read the company. Let's say you're at a big company that have 10 different UIs that people need to bounce around internally through. For those of you who don't know, a bigger company will have subset teams, and often you don't just get promoted, they ask you to like lead another team. So you'll get moved to another team. How do you make sure that that company can move fast? Well, you probably want all of them to use the same type of UI framework, such as Angular or React. So that's when you get into like decisions of it's not about you and what you want. It's about your company, about your clients, about what would help your entire company move fast and have this like shared code base that you all understand in case 10 people leave, you need to backfill those positions with other people from your company. Well, they already know Angular because everything we do at our company is Angular, right? So these are the things that people don't think about. They just like to bash Angular and bash technologies, but like there's
Yeah.
literally tons of thought that go into like these choices that are happening.
Yeah, no, that makes, yeah, perfect sense. I think it's like good to see the difference between like if it's like your own project and things to consider versus if it's a team, that's an organization project, thing to consider. One thing that I'm gonna tell you, maybe a hot take, one thing that all the beginner developers should definitely not consider, or I mean should consider, is if you're working with databases, just start with like either Postgres or SQL database. When I was first learning to code, there was a billion MongoDB tutorials. There's a
The
billion like,
Mongo.
yeah, Firebase tutorials. My first job, none of those things. It was SQL database, and so I had to learn like a lot right on the job, and it's really really hard. And so if you actually search listings, you're not going to see that many listings for MongoDB or like Firebase even today. I haven't looked in a long time. So if you're starting out and you just want to be in line with what a lot of people are using, I'm not saying Firebase, DB, and like MongoDB people are not using them, but majority of the companies just go with the SQL or Postgres. So Make sure that's you're building
Yeah.
projects using tech that other companies or majority of companies are using. That's just a
I,
little tip for
I
anyone
did have
starting
a
out.
little thing to point out. Do you follow like Levels IO on Twitter?
Why is it not? I don't know.
He,
I'm gonna go look. I don't think I do, but it
he's
sounds
like,
familiar.
I'm sure you've seen him. He has like a side project or a product that helps do like photo shoots. So he does like AI photo shoot stuff. This guy's making like 50,000 every month revenue. His app is written in PHP. So
Brilliant.
like again, it just kind of highlights that like from a side project perspective, it doesn't really matter as long as the tech you're using is what you're used to. I think he just uses like vanilla JS for some small interactivity, HTML, and PHP for his backend, and probably MySQL, honestly. Or sorry, Postgres.
Postgres,
So
yeah.
like just use what makes you move fast. And at some point I was actually getting sick of Next.js and I started looking into Remix. I started learning about Remix and started building projects in Remix. And then I started realizing as I'm switching between my side projects, one of them is in Remix, one of them is in Next, and I have
Yeah.
to do this context switching. So I'm like,
Yeah.
this is not good for me and my needs, right? I have like now
Yeah.
two different paths that I have to like keep in mind. So I decided to just drop Remix, not because it's
Yeah.
bad, because it's just like it goes against what I do on my channel and it goes against all my
Yeah.
side projects. Um, sorry, not that I don't want to like keep on talking, but someone in the chat says, do not even learn Angular. So I think, unfortunately, I think there's like always like this hate on various things. Like people hate on PHP all the time. People hate on Angular. But if you joined React projects and you've jumped through enough React projects, they're all just hacked together with whatever libraries that they decide to use. Like everyone,
Yeah.
some use Redux, some use MobX, some use Jotai, Sustan, some use Context. It's just a cluster of like people just picking and choosing whatever they think is best for their project. And the thing about Angular is that
It's
it's
one
all
solution.
consistent. It's
Yeah.
all consistent. It's all using TypeScript, which, as you can tell, the entire industry is moving to TypeScript. So they made moves from the get go that were pretty smart. We're going to invest all in TypeScript. Everyone pushed back. They're like, oh, this is stupid. It's too hard. It's too convoluted. Now look at where we are now. Everyone's like, you learning TypeScript.
Yeah. What's crazy just that point about again bashing other frameworks. Like again, it's whatever. Like to me, you got to be like framework agnostic with the fact like it's like what is the best thing for the team? What is the best thing? Like to your point, you just said I needed to pick Next. Like Remix isn't bad, but just need to stick with Next because this helps me move fast, helps me solve my goals, and this is like super important. Like for Allo BB, like uh, they say like Vue and for X better, and for you that might be exactly the case. Like I suck at Vue, like I can't move fast, even though like people say Vue has like really nice dev experience and blah blah. Like I don't even want to learn Vue because I just want to stay in the React ecosystem because that's something that allows me to build things. But to the point of like Angular, there like it's a great solution because it keeps everybody on the same page. It's very opinionated. It's like full solution. And what's interesting, like, and maybe it's changing now, but you know, if you look at all the enterprise, like huge companies, they'll use like Java and Angular or C# and Angular or whatever it is. Like, so I think like it's whatever makes you happy and makes you move fast. Do that, and then when you're working on the team, it's like whatever makes the team move fast and be happy, do that. And then on your side time, like you could do anything you want. So for me, in my personal journey, I like the company I work for. It's a headless CMS company. They really love Next.js 14. So a lot of the resources that like I'm working on to create there, it's all Next.js. And to me, like I feel like I'm getting Next.js overwhelmed. Like I just want to do something different. So on my YouTube channel, like I want to focus on building stuff with Remix. And for me, why I feel like I want to use Remix, because Remix doesn't have as many crazy features like Next. So a lot of times you're like relying on just standard web stuff. So you actually, by doing Remix, you get to focus less on your framework and more on learning like web concepts. And for me as a developer, I think it's kind of cool because it keeps me kind of learning things that sometimes you forget because they get kind of integrated into the framework. And like, for instance, what I tell people, and I don't know if it's true, but I have this saying, so take it for what it is. When people like, it's probably not true, but I'm going to say it anyway. When people learn Next, they get good at Next. When people learn Remix, they get better at web development. And so whatever, take it for what you like. But I think it's like important to kind of acknowledge what you're doing. And I do want to learn Vue. I do want to like play with Go, or I want to try something else. But again, for the things that I'm doing right now, like I think it's important to make a decision, be like, hey, I'm just sticking with Next.js, or I'm sticking with Remix. And like Cody, you were saying, like on your YouTube channel, people expect you to do more Next.js stuff. You move fast in Next.js, so that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I do feel like
Anyway,
sometimes I'm
I'm
like
just looking at the
locked
comments.
in. I feel like I'm kind of locked into React and Next because, as you can tell, when you make a channel and you start niching down, like all your subscribers watch you for that niche. And then if you try to go outside that niche at all, your views
Yeah.
just bottom out to
Yeah.
zero.
Yeah.
Like, and then at work, I work with React at work. So it's like, I want to make sure that I'm just becoming more proficient at skills that I know are paying my bills. And that right now it's
Yeah.
React and Node.js. So not that other solutions aren't good. It's what works for me. It's but what's put the lights on over my head, you know?
Yeah, and that's kind of like really like exactly what you just said. It like resonates like with me. Like for instance, I want to spend most of my time doing the things that help me stay employed and then help me like improve as a developer, even if it's just one like framework. And I think like before like bashing a framework, before bashing like someone's opinion, like you just have to acknowledge what are their goals, and like maybe they're doing things because those things that they're doing are helping them meet their goals, help them take care of their families and like stuff. And uh like like sometimes somebody says, Paul, what's your favorite framework? And I literally tell people the one that I get paid for. It's like whatever's gonna help me make my money. And um
Yeah.
but I know we are like it's like 10 a.m. I don't know how, like I want to definitely be mindful of your time and not over do it. So if
Mhm.
anybody has any like last minute questions, definitely let them know in the chat. But I do have a question, because this is my personal question. I want to ask, like, when you're creating, because I know you do like Next.js, so it's a full stack framework. But what are your thoughts on like having your API coupled with your front end versus like decoupled, where you have your API separate from your front end? Just like your opinion.
Um, Again, I think it depends on what the project's for. If it's a side project that only you and maybe one other person need to work on, I think it's fine just couple it all together. It just helps you move a little bit faster. It helps the code seem easier to maintain. But I do think there's some things that you can apply to your code so you don't have like SQL statements nested all over your React components. I think that's getting into dangerous territory if you care about clean architecture and like some of the things that more experienced engineers who've been working in the industry for 40 years have talked about. I would try to apply some of those patterns. And I have a video on my channel about clean architecture, or at least my attempt at it, where there's certain things in your code base that you can layer off and kind of insulate from other things. So like you have a bunch of React and Next.js stuff. For Next.js, you have something called like unstable no cache, or sorry, unstable no store. You also have like a next cache function. So if you start using those next functions inside of your business logic, you've basically coupled all of your business logic to Next.js. And now you're going to be having a lot more issues getting off of that if you decide to. So I would say try to apply some type of patterns that make it a little bit layered, I guess. I don't know. There's like 1,000 different ways to do the same thing in
Yeah.
code, but I think you get the point. But if you have a team and you have a need to serve a public API, then that's when I say, okay, well, just start with a external API and use Next.js for like your server-side rendered, front-end caching thing. And then just have an external API. Maybe you want the ability to switch it over to Go or Rust because you really need to squeeze out as much performance as possible. But again, look at your project needs. If there's no need for an external third-party person to like read from your API, then yeah, it's probably fine. Just use server actions in Next.js.
Yeah.
But
And
again,
go
sorry,
ahead,
my
go ahead,
last
go ahead.
point.
Sorry to
Like
interrupt.
you can't tell the future, right? You don't know what your project needs right now, like in 6 months from now. So that's why some people just start with these abstractions from the get-go, because they're like, I don't know if I'll need a third-party person to read from my API. So I'm just going to go ahead and start with one. Um, that's an approach you can take too if you want.
Yeah, no, that's really good, helpful feedback. We had a question in the chat. Someone, congratulations, by the way, they got their first job. Man, I missed it where it went. But said, just got my first Next.js dev job. Any tips for a good start? Any tips working with Next, or things to
Um,
keep in mind? I think it's such a like a big question because it could be so many
Yeah,
different
I would say
things.
just read through all the Next docs. I feel like Next is one of those things that has so many different small gotchas in it that if you don't read through those, kind of like AWS. AWS has tons of little gotchas with it with like limits. And if you don't understand those limits coming up front, like you're gonna write code and you're gonna be stuck on various things. As far as your first job though, I mean like congrats on that. Um yeah, just be open minded, try to find a mentor and I don't
So
know.
yeah, no, no, yeah, exactly. Like just the advice is just like keep like focus. Like I would say like if you're like got hired, and I don't know if it's your first role, what I would say is focus on paying attention, like what people ask you to do at your job, and literally focus on making sure that your big priority is just being able to get your tasks done at your work. So when I got my first developer job, it was like I got hired as a front end developer, but the issue there, like they expected me to learn C# and start contributing to like the API, not like write it from scratch, but to make minor edits. And so, and that was also with like SQL, which I didn't know. And so I was like, shit, like there's so much stuff I don't know. So I was like, let me just put all my attention into improving the things that I know are going to just help me continue doing well at my job, and everything that I wanted to do like side projects, I just kind of like put that off, and I just focused on only learning the things that helped me, number one, not get fired my first week, but number two is just to continue to improve, to grow. And I ended up working there for a year and a half, so it worked out kind of okay. And then let's see here. Somebody says, do you think it's worth to learn C#? I think like C# is a great language. I actually like it. But me personally, I prefer the JavaScript ecosystem. But let's say like if you learn Java, you'll find a job. If you learn C#, you'll find a job. If you stay with like Node.js and JavaScript, you'll find a job. It's like I think there's plenty of opportunities. Actually, before you go, sorry, Cody, to keep you on,
No,
but I do have.
I told my wife to text me when the kids wake up, so I mean I can just stick around
Okay.
until.
Yeah. So one, like, cause we're talking about jobs, here's like one questions I have. And like, you look at like frameworks that come out like Next.js, Remix, they're full stack. You need to know something about backend to work with them. You need to like kind of keep that in mind. So do you think like, before, like when I got hired, I literally got hired on my front end development like skills, but there was that, like, but do you think nowadays is that you kind of need to have some sort of back end knowledge, so like that gap between back end and front end is shrinking? And if you're just focused on front end, do you think it's going to be a little bit harder to get hired as a junior developer? I don't know, let me know if that question made sense.
I mean, I think the
So
more you know and the more you learn, I think the more you're worth. So if they're gonna pick someone who only knows front end and stack you against someone who knows front end and knows back end as well, I feel like they would probably pick someone who's more well rounded. Now there are front end experts, right? There's people who like that's what they do. They do front end engineering. They know about how to set up like awesome React projects and like make sure everything is set up and clean. And if that's something that you're like passionate about, I would say do that. But I think learning about the back end helps you understand why the front end works the way it does and vice versa. Like you won't understand pagination until you start messing with the back end and you realize, oh, I can't send over 20,000 records from the back end because A, that's a big hit on my database in my back end resources. B, on the front end, user can't even visually look through 20,000 records and the Chrome browser and React is just going to die. So there's like a symbiotic relationship between like knowing why and the limitations of like the front end and the back end, how they kind of have their own pitfalls, I guess you could say.
yeah, I was just gonna do one quick shout out for Jason. He says, "Hey guys, I've been learning to code a few years and recently got my first dev job at 41. Been following you both for years. Just want to say thank you all for all that you do and help teach people like me. Congratulations, awesome, and thank you. And I love seeing messages like this because." I think learning to code is like very difficult, and it just takes perseverance, just not quitting, and just keep at it. And it's kind of cool to see folks that started their journey, and then you see their fruits of their labor, their success. And wanted to tell you the funny story about pagination. So that first company that I worked for, I was tasked with implementing pagination. And I just remember seeing like working on our test project, I'm like, oh, we're getting all the data on the front end from our test database. So I guess I just implement the pagination client side. And so I did, and it worked fine. And then my boss the next day calls me. He's like, Paul, you broke that whole component. Our table doesn't load anymore. What the hell's going on? And then I'm like, I don't know, like, let me take a look at it. So I started working and trying to figure it out. Like I went with the other test database that had like 1,000 entries. And I'm like, man, it is broken. Something's not working. And I was like, I'll look at it after lunch. I went to lunch. I came back, and all of a sudden, all the data is there. And I realized, oh, it's just taking forever to load all that data client side because we have like 10,000 items. And I go to my boss. I'm like, bro, I don't think it's my fault. I think this should be handled on the back end because I was still like a front end engineer. And he was like, I don't know, whatever. But I thought it was funny. And so now I was doing pagination for one of my side projects. I'm like, yeah, you do it on the server. That's where it's done. It makes perfect sense.
That's one of those hard lessons you end up learning. It's like, first of all, it's like a UX smell. You shouldn't have a ton of data on the screen because like your average user, unless you have like super power users, I think people forget how technically challenged a lot of people are. So if you're displaying like 10,000 records to users, is that the best user experience? Typically, you probably want to have filters or a search bar, and all of that should be kind of data driven from the back end with like queries and stuff. But yeah, I think I've done that before when I was starting off as well. Like, I'll just show everything, and then like your React application fails.
Yeah, I saw Jose had a question. It's like, how do you figure out threads before you build a side project? Maybe he means trends. I don't know. But
I'm not sure about that.
yeah, I think like go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think my kids are awake now, but if you have any like one more question or anything or any last topic, I think I could do one more.
No, I just literally want to say thank you for everything you do. Thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate everything you're doing. And I just want to say Web Dev Cody not only has a good YouTube channel, he's just a good dude. And I just remember connecting with you on YouTube, like before I even had like that many subscribers, and you're like, oh, invite me to your channel, which is like insane because a lot of people, they're like, oh, you're too small. Like, I don't need to talk to you. And like, you just like kind of were like, yeah, no, it'll be cool to like have you. So really appreciate it. Really love what you're doing. And just want to see you continue to grow and build cooler things. And for some reason, if you're not on Web Dev Cody's channel, like go there, check it out. So any last things? I know you have an Next.js course, you have a couple of cool things. Just quickly plug what you're working on and what you want people to know.
It's Tech Rally. Yeah, it's funny because like I feel like you, me, and Tech Rally were all at the same like subs. Maybe I had like a little bit more.
I know, bro. Don't point that out, bro. Like I'm gonna go
okay,
cry
I'm sorry.
now. I'm just kidding.
But I would always watch you guys. I would just like watch you guys and like, oh, this is cool. We're all kind of on the journey. So
I like how Tech Rally says, he says, how do I become a cool developer like Web Dev Cody? Tech Rally, you're cool in your own right. You have that soft spoken voice and you just look so handsome. So I don't know, like what else you could add to that.
Is Tech Rally, are you still making videos?
I think he took a break. I think he became a senior engineer at Amazon, front-end engineer. Congrats on that. That is really awesome. And he's making moves. He's moved. Like, sign up to his email to get all the updates, tech rallies. You'll get all the history. But yeah, with that being said, like, just really thank you. Really appreciate your time, and we'll do more stuff. And I definitely want to pick your brain on building SaaS products that make $1 trillion. And maybe we could do something with, build something together. It would be awesome. But anyway, what are you working on right now? Just before you go, like I cut you off. Anything that you want to share?
I mean, I got some like little side projects I'm trying out, but I don't know. We'll see if they end up turning into anything. But yeah, I'm definitely down to try to actually build something. It's just I have so many ideas, but not enough time to work on all of them. So it's like I got to discipline myself to just stay focused on one, and then also focus on the YouTube channel. But yeah, I'm definitely down. Like I mentioned, I think I sent you a text. I'm down to work on something with you. And I'm also down to do more streams in the future. I don't know why it took like so long for me to get on your channel. Sorry about that, but it's been fun.
No, it's really awesome. Anytime. So thank you all. Everybody have a rest of the great Sunday, and we'll see you all later. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
See ya. Thank you.